Caitlin Clark has responded to being fined by the W.
Okay, so Caitlin Clark, she's no stranger to the spotlight, right? But this time, it totally found her for all the wrong reasons. The WNBA actually slapped her with a $200 fine just for a simple social media post hyping up her teammates. And get this, instead of backing down, Clark went ahead and doubled down. Her fiery response absolutely exploded on social media, sending fans into a complete frenzy and kicking off one of the wildest debates of the entire season.
Like, you would think that that means absolutely nothing. You would think it means nothing, right? Refs couldn't stop us, elite bench mob. It wasn't for the lack of trying. Glad they're having fun and celebrating like no other teams. Will she get fined for saying that? Yeah, she got fined. She got fined for saying refs can't stop us.
Now, for a rookie who's already shouldering the weight of an entire franchise and the league's full attention, this moment proved one thing: she's absolutely not afraid to push back when she feels the system is out of line. But hold up, this isn't just about a measly fine. This is about power, pure control, and a massive growing rift between the players and the league itself. The big question everyone's asking: did the WNBA actually silence Clark, or did they accidentally ignite a voice louder than anyone could have imagined?
Caitlin Clark stated, got fined $200 for this. LOL. Bitch mob will be even more rowdy tomorrow. Let's go. At Indiana Fever.
So when the news dropped that Caitlin Clark got fined by the WNBA, fans were genuinely stunned, right? But here's the kicker: it wasn't the $200 amount, which, let's be real, is a total drop in the bucket for most pro athletes. No, it was the ridiculous reason behind it. Clark wasn't fined for roughing it up on the court, skipping practice, or breaking team rules. Nope. She was fined for a social media post, literally a single line on her account. Just a quick shout out supporting her teammates and a playful jab at the referees was apparently enough to trigger a full-on league punishment.
I'm pretty sure she just said the refs can't stop them celebrating. This isn't even her going at refs. It's literally like if you say the word refs and you're an Indiana Fever player, you're going to get fined. If you say the word refs as a Fever player, the word referees has to be spoken, cannot be said by an Indiana Fever player, otherwise it's a fine.
For a lot of people, it just felt incredibly petty, but for others, it blew the lid off something way bigger. This idea that the league was basically watching her every single move, just waiting for any excuse to keep her in check. Now, her actual post, it wasn't some groundbreaking manifesto or a scathing attack. Clark simply wrote that the referees couldn't stop them, then followed it up with pure praise for her bench. That was it. But those few words ignited a total firestorm. Yahoo Sports picked up the story. Screenshots went viral across social media, and before you knew it, the WNBA announced that Clark had totally crossed a line. In their eyes, her post undermined their authority and disrespected officiating. The punishment came down fast, and just like that, the biggest rookie in the game became the latest player to get fined for daring to speak out.
If she got fined for, celebrating on the floor, that's even worse. But the word referee was spoken by an Indiana Fever player, therefore they get fined. Like, it is madness.
But here's what made this moment so controversial. It wasn't just the fine, it was the entire context surrounding it. Caitlin Clark has become the undisputed face of the WNBA this season. Every single game she plays gets broadcast, clipped, and deeply analyzed. Every word she utters is magnified. And now, every post she makes is being actively monitored. The league desperately wants her stardom, those massive ticket sales, and soaring ratings. But here's the kicker: they also demand she plays by their rules. That's exactly where all the tension sits. The WNBA is stuck between trying to promote a brand new superstar and desperately trying to control the narrative around her. For fans, honestly, the fine was just laughable. I mean, $200, that's probably less than what Clark spends on groceries in a week.
Money well spent. Turns up. Them demons. CC said that little $200 ain't ish. She spend more than that a week on groceries. They are ridiculous for finding you. And me personally, I feel like they're definitely ridiculous for finding her over a post. For one, don't feel you know she said it unless she told her herself.
But the principle of it? Oh, that hit hard. Why on earth would you punish a player for simply showing passion? Why shut down someone for lifting up her team and absolutely electrifying the fan base? To so many, it honestly felt like the WNBA cared way more about silencing its players than actually fixing the real underlying issue, you know, the referee problems that Clark and Sophie Cunningham had been quietly pointing out, and that's what truly fueled the outrage. Even Clark herself couldn't resist making the fine public. Instead of deleting her post or issuing some apology, she just shared the amount with a laughing emoji. That one response right there showed she wasn't about to be intimidated. If anything, it just made her fans even louder.
It's silly, bro. It was a damn Instagram post. Y'all find her over an Instagram post. Somebody said this league is so unserious. Maybe if they actually invested in getting better referees and holding them accountable, people wouldn't complain as much. They should probably look into that. $200 is hilarious, man. I can cover that ish for you, Kaylin.
Fans didn't see that fine as a setback at all. Nope, they saw it as a badge of honor. Solid proof that Clark's fire absolutely could not be contained. And with that, a massive ripple effect kicked off. What started as a simple fine very quickly morphed into something entirely different. Players started speaking out. Podcasts were calling out the league directly, and fans were rallying harder than ever before. And right there, at the very center of it all, was Clark, outright refusing to stay quiet. But if the league honestly thought that fine would shut her down, they were dead wrong. Trust me, this was only the very beginning.
These players don't care anymore about this. Not that they don't care. They don't care anymore about the way they're perceived in this league, because they know they can do everything right, they can do everything perfect, they can do everything to promote the league, and the people that hate them are still going to hate them, or they can do whatever the hell they want. They can go and compete, and they can actually help improve the league. They can actually help improve the league by, winning and continuing to boost huge numbers.
Okay, so Caitlin Clark, she absolutely could have just taken that fine and quietly moved on. Most rookies would have kept their heads down, focused on their game, tried to avoid making waves, but that is not Caitlin Clark. Instead of seeing that fine as a punishment, she actually turned it into pure fuel. Her response wasn't some carefully worded PR-approved statement. There was no apology, no half-hearted explanation. What it was raw, it was real, and it was unapologetically defiant. Clark jumped right onto social media and made it crystal clear she wasn't bothered in the slightest, with a short, iconic post that read, "Got fined $200 for this Lola. Bench mob will be even more rowdy tomorrow." She completely flipped the script. That post went viral in seconds, hitting over 1 million views within hours, sparking hundreds of comments, and a tidal wave of support from fans who absolutely loved seeing her playful defiance. To them, it wasn't about the money, it was about attitude. Clark wasn't afraid of the league, she wasn't afraid of the refs, and she certainly wasn't about to censor herself to fit into some polished image. She was ready to be herself, even if it meant getting penalized. That authenticity, that's exactly why so many people have connected with her since her college days. The tone of her message was everything. Instead of being bitter or defensive, she just laughed it off. That Lola carried more weight than any long explanation ever could, telling fans she wasn't fazed and she'd keep bringing that same energy no matter what the WNBA threw her way. It was a pure statement of resilience, showing that even in the middle of controversy, she could actually turn negativity into momentum. And in that moment, she wasn't just a player on the court, she became a rallying point for an entire fan base. Support flooded in instantly. Fans commented that $200 was nothing compared to the pure joy she was bringing to Indiana. Others quickly pointed out how ridiculous it looked for the league to punish a rookie for simply energizing her team. Some even joked about setting up a GoFundMe to cover Clark's fines so she could keep speaking her mind. The more the league tried to rein her in, the more her fans pushed back with her. But beyond the jokes and the memes, her response sent a serious, undeniable message. Clark made it clear she wasn't going to let the WNBA dictate her voice. If anything, she leaned even further into her identity as a passionate competitor who isn't afraid to challenge authority. That kind of energy is incredibly rare in a league still trying to find its balance between star power and strict professionalism. And with Clark, every tiny moment seems to carry extra weight because of that constant spotlight. By refusing to play it safe, Clark actually drew more attention to the fine than the WNBA probably ever wanted. Instead of sweeping it under the rug, it became headline news. And while her post was short, the ripple effect was absolutely massive. Fans rallied, teammates were inspired, and critics of the league found fresh ammunition. The fine might have been meant to silence her, but her response did the exact opposite. It ignited a storm, and soon, she wasn't the only one speaking out. Another voice, Sophie Cunningham, was about to raise the stakes even higher. Seriously, if Caitlin Clark's response set the initial spark, Sophie Cunningham absolutely poured gasoline on the fire. Known for her fiery personality and her willingness to say exactly what others only think, Cunningham held nothing back when she discussed the league's reaction to the Fever's recent success on her podcast. She literally laughed about how the WNBA was so mad that we won, and openly admitted the Fever weren't even supposed to be in that position. This wasn't just confidence, it was a direct shot at the idea that the league somehow didn't want Indiana to succeed. Her words hit with the force of a hammer because they validated what so many fans were already thinking. The fine against Clark wasn't just about a social media post. To players like Cunningham, it symbolized something much deeper, a palpable frustration from the league that these underdog Fever were defying expectations and that their fiery personalities were becoming impossible to control. Cunningham didn't mince words about the tension, painting a vivid picture of a league annoyed that this scrappy team had stolen the spotlight. She even went further, describing just how intense the game felt, admitting she was sweating with nerves pacing, unable to sit still. That admission totally humanized the victory, reminding fans that the Fever weren't supposed to be there, but they were, and they were hungry. The raw emotion in her voice and her refusal to censor herself made her comments feel incredibly authentic. She wasn't reading from a script, she was living it, and she wanted people to know exactly how it felt. What made that moment so explosive was how Cunningham connected it all back to the larger conflict between the players and the league. By claiming the WNBA was angry they won, she suggested that the system itself was actually against them. This wasn't some random rant, it was a claim that echoed through locker rooms and fan conversations alike. Suddenly, Clark's fine didn't seem isolated at all. Instead, it looked like part of a clear pattern of control and suppression. Fans quickly linked Cunningham's words with Clark's situation, seeing two players, one a rising superstar, the other a seasoned competitor, both calling out the same thing in wildly different ways. Clark with her defiant humor, and Cunningham with her raw honest. Together, their voices amplified each other, creating a narrative that the WNBA was fighting its own players instead of celebrating them. Of course, Cunningham's boldness didn't come without risk. She even joked about probably getting fined herself, knowing full well the league doesn't take kindly to public criticism. That self-awareness only made her comments even more powerful. She wasn't speaking recklessly, she was speaking knowingly, accepting whatever might come because she felt the truth absolutely needed to be said. And fans, they absolutely loved. Clips of her podcast spread like wildfire across social media, with supporters praising her courage and comparing her attitude to those old-school players who were never afraid to speak their mind. In an era where athletes are often told to stick to the game, Cunningham's rawness stood out as a breath of fresh air. By the end of her comments, it was abundantly clear this wasn't just Caitlin Clark against the WNBA, it was big teammates were speaking up, the fan base was growing restless, and the story was no longer just about a fine, it was about a movement of players daring to challenge the league's authority. But as Cunningham's words echoed across social media, the real explosion came from the fans themselves. They weren't just listening, they were ready to fight back. The moment Caitlin Clark's fine became public and Sophie Cunningham's podcast started making the rounds, fans unleashed an absolute tidal wave of reaction. Social media platforms lit up with outrage, hilarious memes, and fiery posts that instantly turned this story into one of the hottest debates in the entire league. What really struck most people wasn't the fine's size. I mean, $200 barely dents a pro athlete's bank account, but the principle behind it. Fans saw it as the WNBA directly targeting a player for being passionate, outspoken, and unapologetically herself. On Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, Fans defended Clark relentlessly. Many pointed out the sheer absurdity of a league that claims it wants attention and growth, then punishes the very player who's drawing in millions of new viewers. Comments poured in, calling the WNBA unserious for issuing fines over a harmless post while seemingly ignoring bigger issues like inconsistent officiating. One fan even wrote that the money spent on Clark's fine would have been far better invested in improving referee. Another simply called the punishment a joke and vowed to support Clark even louder at the next game. The viral energy surrounding Clark's response showcased just how deeply her fan base is invested in her story. People didn't just brush off the fine, they turned it into a badge of honor. Memes spread, joking that Clark should start a fine jar with fans volunteering to fill it every time the league tried to silence her. Others compared her rebellious streak to sports legends who once clashed with their leagues, but ultimately cemented their status as cultural icons. For many, this wasn't just about basketball, it was about freedom of expression, about standing up against what they saw as heavy-handed authority. Beyond the humor, there was genuine anger. Fans accused the league of trying to stifle the very personality that had made Clark such a phenomenon in the first place, arguing that this kind of micromanagement risked alienating not just Clark, but the very supporters the WNBA desperately needs to keep. Clark's rise has been one of the few stories to bring consistent mainstream attention to the league, and fans saw this fine as undeniable proof that the WNBA didn't actually know how to handle her stardom. It wasn't just casual fans either. Fever diehards in Indiana rallied around Clark, using the fine as motivation to create an even louder, more hostile environment for visiting teams. Chants of support echoed across online forums, with some even planning creative signs and chants for upcoming games. For them, the fine wasn't a punishment, it was a rallying cry. The effect spilled beyond Clark and Cunningham. Their comments gained traction because they mirrored what fans felt. Together, their voices converged into one powerful narrative: the league versus the players, and the passionate fans who love them. Instead of silencing Clark, the WNBA had unintentionally made her the face of defiance, someone willing to take a hit and still keep fighting. But while the fans were incredibly loud online, reality on the court was about to hit hard. The Fever weren't just dealing with league fines and controversies, they were literally limping into the playoffs with a roster absolutely riddled by injury. And that looming crisis was about to test Clark and her teammates more than any social media storm ever could. So, while Caitlin Clark's fine was totally dominating the headlines, the Indiana Fever were quietly facing an even more pressing problem: injuries. As the team prepped for their playoff matchup against the Las Vegas Aces, the injury report looked like a nightmare, a ridiculously long list of absences. Clark herself was sidelined, Sophie Cunningham was out, Chloe Bibby unavailable, and even veteran Sydney Colson was missing. To top it off, Temi Fagbenley was stuck in concussion protocol for her fourth straight missed game. This wasn't just a setback, it was a complete and utter reshaping of the roster at literally the worst possible time. The Fever, who had already clawed their way into contention, suddenly looked like a completely different squad. This wasn't the same group fans had rallied behind all season. The identity, that amazing chemistry, the rhythm they'd built all year, it all seemed to crumble under the sheer weight of missing bodies. A playoff series is already grueling enough when you're fully healthy, but heading into a matchup against the defending champions short-handed, that felt like trying to scale Mount Everest with broken equipment. For Clark, the frustration must have been immense. Fined off the court, then forced to sit out on it. It was a double blow. She had single-handedly pushed the franchise into national conversation, helped fuel a massive surge of interest, and now she could only watch from the sidelines as her teammates tried to hold the line. Cunningham's fiery presence was also missing from the rotation, robbing the Fever of one of their key emotional leaders. The bench, praised earlier for its energy, was now being asked to fill roles way beyond their usual scope. The contrast with the Aces was just brutal. While Indiana's roster looked battered and bruised, Las Vegas walked into that matchup healthy and supremely confident. Every key player available, every rotation perfectly intact. On paper, it was a total mismatch, and fans knew, but that didn't stop Fever supporters from desperately clinging to hope. If anything, the injuries actually added to the underdog storyline. A weakened roster meant fewer expectations, but also a huge opportunity for players who rarely got the spotlight to step up. Still, there's no denying the emotional toll of so many absences. Basketball is as much about rhythm and trust as it is about raw skill, and the Fever were losing both. Players who hadn't logged major minutes were suddenly being asked to perform under the brightest lights of the season, and with Clark out, the pressure to create offense, spark momentum, and hold the team together fell squarely on the shoulders of Kelsey Mitchell. For fans, these injuries only cranked up the sense of unfairness. First, Clark gets fined for a harmless post, then the team gets absolutely gutted by a wave of absences. To them, it felt like the Fever were fighting uphill battles both on and off the course, and while fans rallied behind their stars, a bigger question loomed over the entire league. If one of its most talked about teams was hobbled at the most crucial moment, what did that say about the WNBA's ability to protect and elevate its own player? The Fever's injury nightmare made one thing crystal clear: they weren't just underdogs anymore. They were survivors. But here's where the playoff spotlight got even harsher. The focus totally shifted beyond Indiana's roster problems. Suddenly, the entire conversation swung back to the league itself, and this growing perception that it was digging itself into an even deeper hole. The WNBA has spent years trying to push its product into the mainstream, but that Caitlin Clark, fine, it blew wide open cracks that a lot of fans already believed were there. Instead of celebrating one of the most marketable rookies in league history, the WNBA chose to make an example out of her, and that decision backfired spectacularly. Instead of silencing criticism, it just amplified it 1,000 times over. Clark's fine became a massive talking point across all sports media, and suddenly, the spotlight wasn't on her game-winning shots or her incredible leadership. No, it was on how the league actually handles its stars. For casual fans just discovering the WNBA through Clark, that fine felt like a huge misstep. I mean, imagine tuning in to follow a rising superstar, only to see her punished for simply hyping up her teammates. The optics were absolutely terrible. Many argued it made the league look insecure, almost as if it was more concerned with controlling its athletes than truly embracing the raw energy that draws fans in. And the timing? That made it even worse. With playoff buzz building, the WNBA had this golden opportunity to lean into the momentum. Instead, the narrative instantly shifted to pettiness and punishment. Then came Sophie Cunningham's comments, which just poured gasoline all over that perception problem. By saying the league was mad that Indiana won, she validated a belief already growing among fans, that the WNBA wasn't just failing to protect its players but actively working against them. That fine against Clark suddenly became deeply symbolic. It wasn't just about one Instagram post anymore. It was about a pattern of decisions that seemed completely out of touch with what fans actually wanted. Officiating has been a sore spot for the league for a long time, and the fine only highlighted it further. Instead of addressing the constant complaints about poor refereeing, the WNBA chose to penalize the player calling it out. To fans, it was absolutely the wrong target. Why go after Clark when the real problem was clear inconsistency on the court? That question echoed across social media and every sports talk show, and each time the answer made the league look weaker. The financial side just added insult to injury. $200 might not break the bank for anyone, but in the world of professional sports, it looked almost laughable. Fining a star player such a tiny amount almost cheapened the punishment itself. Fans joked that Clark could set up a fine fund and be covered for the entire season. Instead of reinforcing authority, the decision came across as petty and totally ineffective. This image problem really matters because the WNBA is at a crossroads. With players like Clark drawing in record-breaking audiences, the league desperately needs to capitalize on this momentum, not squander it. Fans want authenticity, passion, and drama. They definitely don't want to see their brightest star dimmed over something as trivial as a post-game jab on social media. But amidst all this controversy, one Fever player quietly reminded everyone that the team was still about more than just headlines. Kelsey Mitchell, a seasoned veteran often overlooked in national conversations, was finally starting to get the recognition she truly deserved. Her rise provided a glimmer of hope, showing that not everything about the Fever's story was wrapped in conflict. And while Clark's fine dominated headlines, Mitchell's surge gave fans a totally different reason to believe.